In everyone's life, when they meet their soulmate, their true partner in life, someone that they truly cannot live without. That moment came for Brian about 20 years ago when he met me. I remember the day I met Brian in middle school in Mr. Tyson's science class. Just to give you guys an accurate visual.
Chemistry. Mr. T.
Science is not chemistry.
You have it.
I was a comm major, I don't know either. Anyway, just to give you guys a visual of Brian back then, he was roughly the same size he is now. He had these really awesome giant braces, okay? He had his hair parted down the middle, what everyone in the school referred to as the butt cut. And he walked into class wearing a blue and yellow t-shirt that just said the word spam on it. So, as you can probably imagine, Brian was a bit nerdy, so I knew he and I would get along very well. But as Brian and I began dissecting frogs together, he kept making these terribly offensive jokes about the frog's anatomy. And so I knew then that I had found a lifelong friend. Unfortunately, I think it's unfair for me to move on tonight making fun of Brian without talking about how absolutely beautiful Emily looks tonight. Emily, I think you look great every day, but tonight, I think I speak for everyone when I say you look absolutely stunning. I'm not just saying that because I'm about to say some really mean things. I mean it 100%. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of getting to know Emily, Emily is a beautiful, smart, intelligent, witty woman. And Brian, you were very lucky to be sitting next to her tonight. I do want to say something to Mr. Bae. Mr. Bae, you did an incredible job of raising such a beautiful, amazing woman. I want to commend you on that. Kevin and Erica, not really sure where it went wrong, but I'm sure you tried your best. But I digress. But on a serious note, Brian, you honestly could not have done any better. Emily, you honestly could not have done any worse. I always knew that true love was blind. Just didn't know they meant that literally. Leave it up to Brian and Emily to have an open bar before the ceremony. Table 8 likes it, so that's good. So I tried thinking of a story that could accurately illustrate Brian and I's friendship, and one story kept coming back to mind. I had just received my driver's license when I was 16, and so I picked Brian up, and we were just going cruising around Indian Hill with just two of us. Partially because we didn't know what else to do, partially because we didn't have other friends. But Brian picked up my case of CDs that day for the first time, and he was leafing through the CDs, and he abruptly stopped and goes, I looked over to see at what, so I had abruptly caught his attention, and I was looking at the CDs, and I said, was it Tom Petty? I couldn't be it. Was it Pink Floyd? I don't think so. Was it my sister's NSYNC CD? Maybe.
My
Sisters. I'm sticking with that story. But what Brian did next perfectly describes it. Without looking at me at all, Brian slowly rolled down the window, and he grabbed the CD and he just goes, nope! And he throws it out the window. So, but it's memories like that with Brian that I'll never forget. An odd thing about Brian and I, as we grew older, our friendship stayed the same. Probably due to our maturity level. You might know Brian is a doctor here in the emergency department in Cincinnati. Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
Some of you might not know that Brian is also the only doctor that has written me a prescription while also misspelling the word prescription. But Brian is so much more than just a terrible doctor. He's also a terrible advisor. Brian has given me some of the worst romantic advice I've heard anyone give to anybody else ever. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. But what I think I like most about Brian is he doesn't really care about material things, as anybody who saw his old Saab could attest to. Brian, because he has a kind heart, he literally took his old car to Goodwill to donate it, and they told him they did not want it. It's a true story.
That's serious, yeah.
But I knew that Brian had met the love of his life when we were on our bachelor party trip in New Orleans. Don't worry, I'm talking about Emily, don't worry. They don't know this, but do you remember when my phone died and you loaned me your phone? Okay. So Brian loaned me his phone, and so I'm sitting there thinking what a horrible, just totally deplorable thing I could text to all his contacts that night. So I'm sitting there thinking, and a text from Emily actually comes through while I have his phone. And so I was in the midst of, texting something terrible back to her, when I had noticed what Brian had just written to her a few minutes earlier. You see, Brian was with all of his friends on his bachelor party down in New Orleans, and he had just finished texting her, telling Emily how much he missed her, and how much he loved her, and how lucky he is to have her. And it was then that I knew Brian had found the love of his life. So just to gauge Brian's commitment, I gave him his phone back, and I asked him a question. I said, Brian, I said, for $50 million, would you give up Emily and everything that you have together, and walk away from all of this and be financially taken care of forever and never have to work a day in your life ever again? And Brian turns to me, as only Brian can, and he looks at me right in the eye, and he says, can I get a cashier's check?
In my defense, I thought he said $50.
And that's why I love Brian, because I've known him for about 20 years, and to this day, I have never had a serious conversation with him. It's impossible to do anything but laugh when you're in Brian's presence. So thank you, Kevin and Erica and Lane, for instilling in Brian the strangest, most demented, sarcastic sense of humor I've ever seen in anybody ever.
Well, he instilled that in us.
This weekend, I think he had something to do with that too. But Brian, on a serious note, you've always been there for me, and I can never thank you enough. You see, Brian's the type of guy that you can call up and something or someone you love dies suddenly in the middle of the night, and Brian will come over, wake up at 2 in the morning, and bring over a 6-pack of beer, and he'll drink it with you and stay up all night before going straight to work the next day.
Not anymore. For any employer.
Why he's drinking before work, I have no idea. But Brian, you and Emily both have made such a commitment tonight, but you both have the very strange and unique gift of making the mundane bearable and funny. And watching you two together tonight becomes immediately apparent that you guys have such a deep friendship, and I admire that. Because I think that's kind of what any successful couple has to become anyway. Because I think, you know, the looks eventually go. Fortunately, Brian got a giant head start on Emily on that one. But Brian, you and Emily have made the commitment tonight to be true best friends for life. And words can't express how happy that makes me. May you always remember this day together with friends, family, staff. I'm so happy you're back in town. Can't imagine Cincinnati without you guys. You both are such great friends, and you're so kind, and you're so generous, and I love you guys. Thank you for letting me make fun of you tonight. So let's raise a glass to, I'm good, thank you. Raise a glass to my best friend and his new best friend.